What's going on there, folks? Earthmaster here. It is April 23rd, 2019, 7:59 p.m. my time here along the West Coast, and taking a look at taking a look at the Earthquake 3D globe. But I wanted to go through the live seismograph stations here first. They are actually pretty gosh darn quiet right now, although that hasn't been the case over the past couple days here. Activity has been on the increase in large magnitude earthquakes, and definitely multitudes of them as well. This is just the last couple days of roughly 4.8 and above magnitudes. Now that also includes 5.5 off of the coast of Canada out there in a pretty sensitive area out there around the Cascadia subduction zone within that vicinity. Also a 5.4 shaking things up down in Mexico as well. Notice the lack of activity once again here in between these 2 points, as we always tend to see. I mean, we just don't see that moderate or major earthquake activity along the West Coast that is so expected, that is so long overdue. I mean, it's just, it continues to be absent. So yeah. You know, who knows what's going on. It's no doubt continuing to build pressure, as it has been for many years in the West Coast region. Deeper earthquake activity over here in Fiji with a 6.0 and a multitude of 5s and 4s there within the vicinity as well. The 6.0 occurring at about 385 kilometers below the surface, working its way up here towards the western part of the Pacific Ring of Fire. Shows a multitude of large earthquakes in and around the Philippines islands region. If I can spit that out correctly. This has been a fun, long, hot day. 6.1 causing some major damage in the Philippine Islands region, including quite a few deaths as well. We'll talk about that here in just a second. To the southeast of here, you see that 6.4 striking within that vicinity as well. Quite a bit of damage from that earthquake as well within that region. Of course, numerous 5s in the vicinity as well. But this is some major earthquake activity working its way around the region here. The red rings, darker red rings, indicating some older earthquake activity, while the pinkish rings and the white rings being most recent. This tells me here that 6.1 is an older earthquake than that 6.4, I believe. Let's go ahead and check the date on that. 4/23/19. Well, that's not what I wanted to do, but let's go ahead and go back here. Yeah, so this older earthquake activity, that 6.1 there, has been followed up by the 6.4 and also a multitude of earthquakes working its way down south and eastward. You can see these white rings indicating some newer earthquake activity, while once again the red rings indicating older earthquake activity. Looking up over here, 5.9 as well, just a general cluster of large quakes within this area. This was in India happening earlier today. I did see that notification come up on my phone. There's no doubt that earthquake did a little bit of shaking out there as well. This is estimated to be in the yellow pager region, with the estimated economic losses and estimated fatalities here in this section here. I'll just pull this up real quick and show you guys what they're estimating here, the percentage wise anyway. Fatalities 65%, meaning well, 1, maybe 10 people at 30%, and so on. So anyway, getting back to the earthquakes out here, you know, just an overall large multitude of large magnitude earthquakes happening within this region. Also, you know, like I mentioned at the start of the video, some deeper earthquake activity as well in Fiji. Let's skip the West Coast in Mexico for right now. We'll take a look down south here. South America region having some older earthquake activity. Nothing big, but there is a 5.1 happening down there. And along the edge of this plate here, a 6.0 earthquake as well. So overall, a pretty large increase, folks. This here is the South Georgia and the South Sandwich Islands region. You can pull up. Let's go ahead and bring up this earthquake map here. We can take a look at the fault sections a little bit better. Like I mentioned, California definitely seen their, or not California, but the Cascadia subduction zone out here around the Gorda Escarpment region, seeing their earthquake activity on the uptick as well. Let's go last 7 days, 2.5 and above. That way we don't cluster up the whole map or possibly crash the computer, which I doubt that would happen, but you never know. Just been one of those days. So this earthquake that I'm talking about down here, the 6-pointer down here around the Sandwich Islands region, South Sandwich Islands area, happening out here by the what's that, Scotia Sea, and let's see what fault system that's resting on out there. South Sandwich Trench. You can see this well-defined trench out here, and that looks like that occurred just off of that region. Not 100% sure which fault line that is. Let's back out here a little bit, but you got the Arctic Circle down here. Anyway, folks, taking a look at the overall bigger picture, you can see how much movement, well, the Pacific Plate has done. For one, a lot of activity out here working its way. You know, it's hard to say which way it's working because we are seeing some increase in pressure and activity out here. Well, about 1,000 miles or so, maybe a little bit more than that, to the northwest of the area. Like I said, that 5.9 borderline 6.0 in India happening, but also some pressure down here to the south as well. You know, so it's hard to say exactly where or when we could see something next. As I've mentioned before in many past videos, I've always watched these quiet zones out here. But then again, California has been quiet, and it's going to do its thing when it wants to do it. So I can't necessarily say be on alert out here in California. But there is a couple signs to watch out for and pay attention to as we're seeing movement along this entire section out here of the parts of the Pacific Plate and the southern part of the Gorda Escarpment area right here. So nonetheless, some activity to watch as this does somewhat extend down into the well, San Andreas fault system, right? That goes through Northern California and into Southern California. So any kind of movement, any kind of extra pressure out here, we do want to pay attention. As you know, a lot of people know that this here is the Cascadia mega thrust area that lies along the west coast. But you know, most of this activity occurring to the west of there, but nonetheless, it's movement, and we definitely need to watch it here. Let's see here, 1 second, zoom in just a little bit, not too much. So you got the Gorda Escarpment down here to the south, which is where this line of quakes is kind of working its way. Yellow being the older earthquakes, orange being the more recent, and of course red being the most recent. So this older earthquake activity over here to the east kind of looks like it may be working its way over here to the west a little bit, as we're seeing the newer earthquake activity in that region. Also the Blanco fracture zone up here to the north, and of course the earthquake activity that's a little bit older up here off the coast of Vancouver Island up here. So, hold on a second here. I don't like this. Don't really deal with this map too often. Take a look at the California. Let's go to the California map here. Relatively normal looking, right? It's a normal looking map for the most part. Down here in Southern California, a little bit of increase in activity. Also down, I was looking at the map earlier. It looks like there may be a little bit of some type of swarm going on down here. Okay, let's see. Is it not going to let me see it? Within this area. I can zoom in here on this other map. Let's go back here real quick and take a look. So anyway, yeah, it looks as though there may be a little bit of swarming going on. This here is just a generic map from the USGS, but 1 day, 2.5 and above. We can go the last, let's just go 1 day, all magnitudes here. You can see what I'm talking about. A little bit of increase in activity along this ending section right here, where the south part of the San Andreas fault system ends, or so they think. You know, there's been some recent studies about that they believe it possibly reconnects underneath the surface here and just continues down into this region of Southern California and then to Baja, Mexico. 1 second here. Bring this back up here. So yeah, and on this map you can kind of see what I'm talking about. That line kind of lightens up a little bit and then it extends down towards the south here. But they call this the Brawley seismic zone, where we have seen some swarming before in the past, quite a bit of swarming up here around the Salton Sea region up to the north. But like I said, the southern part of the San Andreas fault zone ends right there, and we're seeing like pretty much an increase in pressure within this south part of this zone. So that's also something to pay attention to, as you know, it's been mentioned that the southern section of the San Andreas fault system is going to be the more probable fault system or area of the San Andreas fault system that could create a big one, as far as percentage wise goes. And if you look at it, it's pretty quiet, pretty absent of activity within this region here that they're talking about, you know, possibly creating a 7.9 or so if it does rupture the entire section down here in the south. So, you know, just be on guard. You know, I'm not saying anything is going to happen down there in Southern California, but it's always a good idea to be prepared, as you know, any kind of pressure, any kind of movement could just trigger the big one down there, or up here in Northern California as well. Let's see, I think I covered everything I wanted to cover. Like I said, the activity off the coast of Canada up there around Vancouver, and overall larger uptick in activity worldwide for the most part. Yeah, so a couple quiet areas. We can bring this down and show more earthquakes on the map, and we can take a look at some of these quiet zones that have been absent in earthquake activity over the last, well, let's bring it back the last few days or so. That way we can see a little bit better. A lot of the Pacific Ring of Fire has been hit out here, but there is a couple absent zones out here. Well, one's right there, although there is a 5-pointer showing up on that system. But also a couple quiet zones up here in this area where we're already seeing a couple 6-pointers over here to the west. So, you know, overall, folks, it's just good to be prepared, and you know, just keep your eyes open. Just make sure you're stocked up on food and water and gas, and be prepared. I want to look at the real-time tremor detection system here real quick in the Pacific Northwest. This here is the hourly tremor map. This here is actually just the last 3 hours of earthquake activity. Shows a large increase and a widespread increase in the well, Washington State up there, Cascadia subduction zone. This tremor detection system deals specifically with the Cascadia subduction zone. The tremor that it gives off when the plates kind of slide past each other in a very slow motion type of fashion, and it's showing quite a bit of earthquake activity and spread out throughout the state of Washington up here. It's going to be something to watch. Like I mentioned, there is definitely pressure out here on the west coast and in the Pacific Northwest, folks. You can see a large portion of the plate down there below the ground. I'm not 100% sure how many miles below the ground or whatnot, but there's definitely some slippage going on a large scale. Up here to Vancouver Island region, also in western Washington, and a little bit starting to show up here in northern Oregon. So with that being said, you know, other regions down here increase in pressure. That includes anywhere south of this central Oregon point, where I've always said that we're probably going to see the next big Cascadia rupture starting right off here off the central Oregon coast. And I base this off of the lack of any type of tremor movement over the past couple years within this vicinity. We've always seen activity to the north, extending up into Vancouver Island, and also to the south, say probably south of Eugene and into Northern California. So if you can picture that, there leaves a blank spot up here, kind of like a blank area where there's been no slippage, or at least no detection of slippage with the Cascadia subduction zone. So that ultimately means this thing is bending and bowing and building up pressure like a rubber band, or rubber band's probably not even a good description of it, but nonetheless it is building up pressure day by day. Not saying anything is going to happen, but definitely this is kind of unusual on a wide scale area like that. I mean, there's a lot of tremor being picked up, and most of the time when we see this large detection of tremor, it's kind of confined in the circle area, kind of like it's going on up there in the Vancouver Island region, kind of like that. But now we're seeing it spread out from pretty much one point in Washington down to the southern part, almost to Oregon. See this little line there extending past and south of Olympia. So we'll watch it, folks, and we'll keep our eyes open and do any update videos if we see anything unusual continue. Not going to fire up the live stream yet, but we'll keep an eye on it. Yellowstone National Park, quiet, folks. Really, really quiet. No earthquake activity at all to report within that region. So anyway, folks, have a good night. I'm going to get off here and get something to eat. It's been a long, hot day. We hit 90, I think 92 degrees out here in Northern California today. Not happy with it one bit. It's too early. Our normal average high temperature is only 75 degrees. So 92 degrees in end of April. Oh, gosh, that's hot. So not what we need. Have a good night out there, folks. Be prepared, stay safe, and we'll chat you next time. Hopefully not too soon. Peace.